Time to mute.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye. Welcome. It's either the bell or the welcome that gathers us. Welcome, dear friends. Welcome to our spiritual home, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tarpon Springs. We're glad to have you with us today. My name is Judy Lucarelli, and I'm serving as worship associate today. For those of you who cannot see clearly, I have graying brown hair, long enough to braid. I usually wear dangling earrings. Since the age of 12, I have been 5 feet 10 inches tall. I have hazel eyes, recently enhanced by cataract procedures, but I do not yet have my new glasses, so bear with me if I move the script around to see it better. While I hail from the Wabanaki lands of the Passamaquoddy, we want to acknowledge that here in this church, we are on the lands of the Tocobaga and Seminole peoples. We are a church of many welcomes, and let me start a warm welcome to all of you. This is a liberal community for all ages, promoting spiritual growth, social justice, and the arts. As such, ours is an active church, and everyone is invited to participate in any of our activities. To learn more about events, our church calendar is on our website, uutarpon.org, or we'd be happy to talk with you after the service. Our children are with us during the beginning of the service at this time. We have faith formation programming available with our gifted leader, Jami Cruz, and her new associate, Ananis Crispo. We're very happy that both of them are with us. Children gather for their time together with them after the story. If you'd like more information about our programming for children, please contact Reverend Kristina or see Jami after the service. For those present with us in the sanctuary, we have connection cards available in the pews near the hymnals. If you fill one out, front and back, and put it in the offering plate or give it to one of our greeters, we will be able to keep in touch with you. If you're watching us on Zoom or YouTube, you can send us an email at membership@uutarpon.org to get connected. There are also small cards to write any joys or sorrows that you would like to share with us at the end of the service, if you'd rather have me read it instead of you coming up to the microphone. Either one is fine. At this time, masks are optional in the church, social hall, and forum room. We're delighted to have Judy Pickett leading the service today, as well as providing special music. As you came into the sanctuary this morning, you were given an index card. Now is when you find out what for. Does everyone have one? And access to a pen? If not, there are some pens in a cup just outside the door. Raise your hand, and either Charlie or Jean will give you one. I guess we forgot to give Jean the script. What Judy would like is for you to write down your response to the following question. What does vulnerability mean to you? What does vulnerability mean to you? You do not have to sign your responses, and it's okay if they're not very long. You don't have to do it right this second. We're going to ask you to put your card in the plate during the offering, and all the cards will be brought up to Judy Pickett. Your responses will be an integral part of the service. So please, if something doesn't come to mind right away, think about it a little bit between now and the offering. Music is provided by our music director, Bonnie Whitehurst. Again, welcome.
Our beginning hymn is number 359 in the great hymnal, When We Are Gathered. And if you feel like standing, you may. I will be playing it through one time, and then we'll sing the 2 verses there.
Good morning. For our opening words, we're going to do something different. There's a responsive reading in your hymnal, number 440. I will start out. We will have the words on the screen, and I'm doing that in particular for our folks on Zoom, because they don't have hymnals, and sometimes they're not involved in the music and readings from the church. So they're going to put the words on the screen for them. So if you're all ready, we're going to get set to go. From the fragmented world of our everyday lives, we gather together in search of wholeness. By diverse and selfish aims. Yet we know that no branch is utterly severed from the tree of life that sustains us all. We hold fast to all of the good we inherit, even as we would leave behind us the outworn and the false. Let us labor in hope for the dawning of a new day, without hatred, violence, and injustice.
Let us nurture growth in our own lives of the love that has shown in the lives of the greatest men and women, the grace of whose hands will illuminate our way.
In this spirit, we gather.
Just needed batteries. Who would know you needed a battery to make a flame? We light our chalice with these words by Michael de Vernon Boblet. We are not alone. We are this flame, ancient as the stars, new as the vulnerable spark. We are this chalice, rimmed by the spiral dance of searching. We are the light soaring, the shadow deepening, the dance between them. We are the heirs of the tribes and their fires, the healers and their circles. We are here. We are here for ourselves. We are here for each other, and we are not alone.
And now our hymn, Spirit of Life, number 123, in the gray hymnal.
Vulnerability is scary, isn't it? Vulnerability is intimidating because the more you expose your soul, the more you strip away your defenses. And without your defenses, how will you protect yourself? When we slip out of our self-protected armor, we're saying, here is all of me, the parts where you can love me and the parts where you can hurt me. But when it comes to long-term happiness, the risk is worth the payoff. This is a story about Maddie, and I'm going to read it verbatim as how it was written. I saw how this played out when our daughter Anna hosted a sleepover for several of her friends, including Maddie. Maddie's mom informed me that her daughter would be bringing along her lovey, and was worried that the other girls might tease her for sleeping with a ragged blanket. The same blanket that she'd slept with for 10 years straight. It had moved with her from crib to her toddler bed to her big girl bed. The blanket had taken long car rides with her, and it had soothed her when she felt lonely or hurt or afraid of the dark. When this girl was around the people who knew her and loved her best, she was never afraid to bring out the lovey into the light. But as she grew older, she began to keep it hidden from everyone else. She couldn't quite put a finger on the reason why. Why did something she loved so much feel like it had to be hidden? Somehow the blanket had become a big secret. Admitting that she slept with a lovey made her feel vulnerable and a little bit ashamed. As night came, I dimmed the lights in the family room where Anna and her friends would sleep. All the girls snuggled under blankets for a late-night movie. I pushed play on the remote. But Maddie? She wanted her lovey. I could see how she was fighting a quiet battle on her insides. The battle was about the risk of vulnerability. If she's like most of us, Maddie will be asking herself the most paralyzing question in the universe. What will people think of me? She made her choice. I watched as she walked to the bedroom, unzipped her bag, and quietly pawed through her belongings to find the love-worn blanket. From my seat in the living room, I saw what happened next. The girl walked back into the room with her blanket tucked under her arm. One of the girls saw what she had retrieved from the bag. Maddie had been found out. "What's that?" asked the friend, pointing a finger at the lovey. I was so proud of Maddie, because here's what she did next. She lifted her chin, mustered her voice, and took the first step toward authentic relationships. She sat cross-legged on the couch and told her room of friends the truth. She told them how her mom's friend had made the blanket for her when she was a newborn, how it had traveled with her on 100 car rides, how she once lost it in a park, and how it fell apart a few years ago, so Grandma had to sew it back together again. She showed everyone the long stitch mark, and it looked like a scar. Everyone listened. No one laughed at her. No one judged. And then the most beautiful thing happened. One by one, each of the girls pushed back their covers, walked into the bedroom, unzipped their own duffel bag. Out came the ragged blankets, a bear with a missing eye, a plush doll. Every girl in the room was hiding a secret lovey in her bag. That was the night of the great unzipping. Each girl dragged her own lovey into the living room, and then they took turns telling their stories about loveys loved, loveys lost, and loveys found again. Everyone slept better that night because someone had the guts to go first. There's a C.S. Lewis quote that goes like this: "Friendship begins in that moment when one person says to the other, 'What? You too? I thought I was the only one.'" The first step toward friendship being deep friendship is vulnerability. True friendship requires a terrific amount of emotional exposure. With it comes risk and the possibility of rejection. But it also comes with the likelihood that someone else knows exactly how you're feeling. Deep friendship grows only when we are deeply known, and that's what the relators teach us. So now, we'll sing Go Now in Peace with the kids.
And our song is Go Now in Peace. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the light of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the light of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
After hearing that wonderful story, the inclination is to change what we all wrote on our cards. It's too late, because now is the time in the service when we take our offering for the work and welfare of this church. Ours is a free faith which must sustain itself financially. There are 3 options to make a donation today. You can go to our website, uutarpon.org, and click on the donate button. You could mail your offering to the church at 57 Reed Street, Tarpon Springs, Florida 34689. Or for those of you with us in person in the sanctuary, place your offering in the offering plates as they are passed. And please remember to add your vulnerability card to the plate as it is passed around. The offering will now be given and received.
Our music during the offering is a hymn from the Teal Hymn Book, number 1053. How Could Anyone? How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
At this time, I'd like you to sit back, relax, close your eyes if you want, take a couple of deep breaths, and think about your life, about nothing, but for a few seconds disconnect from the world. Here come the cards. This is the fun part. Huh? Here come the judge. Here come the judge. The envelope, please. Any more? Oh, over there too. Wow. I don't know if I've got enough time. We're limited to an hour, right? Thanks, Charlie. I asked this question of a group of my friends recently, and it was interesting the responses that I got. So I thought instead of doing a reading that I write or find, I'm going to read your cards. So bear with me. Vulnerability, the willingness to be transparent without the mask of defense, generated by the illusional separate self. It requires courage. Fear exists. Bill Ahrens. Vulnerability means I am of the nature to fall ill at times. I am of the nature to have difficult emotions and delusional thoughts arise. I am out of the nature to grow old and frail. I am of the nature to grow old and frail. I am of the nature to live for a while, then cease to live. I am human. God, these are great. Center myself, or it will be scary. Vulnerability means being your authentic self without concern for how others may react. Boy, that's a brave one. Vulnerability is the fear of risk. Too true. Being open and helping authentic in myself. How I feel when my confidence abandons me. I felt that one today. That's a good one. Can put that up there. Vulnerability. Will I be accepted? Will I open my mouth and reveal my ignorance? I've been there. Have you been there? Being willing to risk opening your heart to others and allowing others into your heart. Letting someone in to see the real you. Taking the risk of getting hurt. Blank. The feeling of an inability to stand up to life. Exposure, open, soft, undefended. Being open. You are open to feelings like joy, passion, and even bad feelings like envy, depression, or hate. You can be hurt. Vulnerability is our capacity for empathy, modesty, and our limited space in the universe. I think I'm going to write a book. Vulnerability means exposing your deeper self to others. Willing to be my real self. Allowing myself to be open to opposing thoughts and ideas of living. Vulnerability is opportunity if you are open to it. Be vulnerable. To be vulnerable, something confidence, trust, the ability, safety, opening up. Being open, being who you are. Opening myself to others, sharing thoughts I would usually keep to myself. And I particularly like how I feel when my confidence abandons me. Thus endeth the reading for today. And thank you for your assistance. I'm gonna do a little intro on this.
Pardon?
I'm gonna do a little intro on this about where I found it and all this.
Oh, that was the intro, but I
No,
can-
no, I'm gonna do a verbal.
Oh, got it.
When I was reaching about for music for today's program, service, I went onto the website, went onto YouTube. Of course, everybody goes to YouTube or Google to find something. And I put in songs about vulnerability. And I found this song, it's by a man named Scott Grace. And so I listened to it, loved it, emailed him, and asked him if I could have the charts and the lyrics. And he said, I don't remember that song. I said, shoot, what am I going to do now? Well, between Bonnie and I, we did it. I transcribed the words. She listened to it, and with her magical pencil, charted the whole thing on piano paper. So that's what we're working from, her creativity and our collaboration. It takes courage to directly ask for love. It takes going out on a limb. There's no hiding in your comfort zone if you want to learn to let love in. It's as blessed to receive as to give. There's no division between the two. And by making yourself vulnerable, I've discovered that it's really true. That there is no desert, just a lush rainforest. If I'm thirsty, then it's up to me to stick my head out of my cave and open to humanity. It takes courage to directly ask for love without entitlement or demand, to stop pretending you're a mighty rock and say, people, here I am. It's as blessed to receive as to give. There's no division between the two. And by making myself vulnerable, I've discovered that it's really true, that there is no desert, just a lush rainforest. If I'm thirsty, then it's up to me to take myself out of my cave and open to humanity, to stick my neck out of my cave and open to humanity. Thank you. Now here comes the good stuff. Maybe. I stand before you, a woman who is approaching her 80th birthday. That means the 9th decade of my life, Greg. I don't know whether this milestone is to be celebrated or lamented. I am morbidly obese. That's what's written in my medical chart. I used to be 5'6.5" tall, but now I'm only 5'5". My doctor told me it was the normal consequence of aging. Don't you just hate it when you go to the doctor with a complaint and she says, everything is a consequence of aging? When I was in 6th grade, I can relate to this, Judy, I was the tallest girl in my class and got taunted about it by my much shorter male classmates. I have what is called, I call my fang smile. That's why I don't smile too much. Because I have one front tooth that was capped years ago, and it's still white, while the rest of my teeth have yellowed with age. Even though I've had good dental care, it's just a consequence of aging, I guess. I've thought about investing thousands of dollars to improve my smile cosmetically, but then I decided, what the hell? At my age, I'll never realize a return on that investment. I am first and foremost a woman, but also a sister, a daughter, a mother, a grandmother, a lover, a wife, a widow, and a friend. When I expose my underbelly, I cringe with fear. I feel vulnerable when I get in my car and drive on 19. I feel vulnerable when I turn on my computer fearing that some hacker has once again taken it over, which has happened a couple of times. I feel vulnerable when I listen to the news and hear the threats of what climate change will do to our world, the divisive political environment. I feel vulnerable when I challenge my daughter about her choices in raising my grandson, and with good reason. She scolds me, I'm his mother, not you, and I'm doing what I want to do. Now, she's coming into town tonight from Colorado, and they said they wanted to see the service. And I said, maybe not. We cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known, when we honor the spiritual connection that grows from that offering of trust, respect, kindness, and affection. No one and nothing is immune to vulnerabilities. Here are some examples that I've written down for vulnerable from my own personal experience. Telling someone when they've upset you, respectfully but honestly. This is a difficult one for many. My usual response is to clam up. Deeply embedded in me is the fear that if I tell someone they've upset me, they won't like me. However, I did have a recent experience when I did respond, and the other person apologized and made excuses for their actions. She should have stopped at, I'm sorry. The excuses weakened her apology. Now I don't trust her anymore, but I didn't dare tell her that. Sharing something personal about you normally wouldn't. That's one of the cards that came up. I'm not usually comfortable doing this, but in a trusted environment, I'll open up. For instance, I joined the Covenant group this year, and the monthly topics were designed to guide you to opening up, to being vulnerable. At the first gathering of my group, I looked around the table and was surrounded by people I'd gotten to know in the last 2 years. We'd already worked together, and I felt cautiously safe. I recall the first time I nervously revealed something personal and waited for judgment. I wasn't judged. I was accepted. Last year for Christmas, my kids gifted me with a subscription to Storyworth that sends me a question each week of the year, giving me an opportunity to share my life story with my kids. It culminates with a bound book with all my stories and the pictures I submitted. Questions like, what were your favorite subjects in school? English. What was your favorite vacation memory? Windjammer cruise. They were easy to write about, but what was your relationship with your mother? That made me cringe. It was not good. Did I really want to open up and share that with my kids? I did not, so I kept it to myself. Many of the questions made me feel so vulnerable that I did not finish the year out. Imagine exposing your belly and writing 52 stories. Be willing to feel difficult emotions like shame, grief, and fear. These emotions are the trifecta of my Achilles heel. I may feel them, but rarely share them. But here I go. The summer between my junior and senior years of college, I got pregnant. I was waitressing at a resort in New Hampshire and fell under the spell of a tall, dark, and handsome boy who was a camp counselor. He might have been 19, I don't know. This was in the mid-60s, and abortion was not available, at least not legally. Or I would have gotten one and continued on with my life. I felt shame because I'd let myself succumb to the misplaced affection of a boy I really didn't know. I felt grief for my loss of innocence, but fear got to me. I'd have to tell my parents, my college friends, and the boy. I felt fear for my unborn child. Would she or he be healthy? Would she or he be adopted by a good family? How could I possibly go on with my life? I spent most of my pregnancy in a home for unwed mothers. I was the oldest one there. My roommate was 14 from Sweden, and she'd gotten pregnant here, so she couldn't go home. And since I was training to be a teacher, I ended up tutoring kids in the home for unwed mothers. I had an uneventful delivery. I never held my daughter, but she was healthy and she was adopted by a great family. I know this because she, Marcia, and I reunited in 2000. Then I felt unmitigated joy. Now she is an integral part of my family. These are but a few of the vulnerabilities of the human condition, but when you really think about it, everyone and everything is vulnerable to something. Take, for instance, power grids. Recent attacks on the power grids in Washington, North Carolina, and Texas resulted in thousands of people being without power. Even though utilities, federal agencies, and state regulators have implemented measures to harden the grid over the last 2 decades, experts fear the system is more vulnerable than ever. If someone really wanted to create a blackout in a certain area to achieve whatever social, cultural, political objectives, it's fairly easy to get a hold of that information right now. And the tools necessary to execute it are readily available. Climate change, we all know that one. Right now we're affected by some of them. The sargassum bloom, the phenomenon of nature, can affect not only our beaches, but in the ocean. The sargassum is crucial habitat for fish and turtles, among other marine life. It's a moving ecosystem. Even if you don't walk on it, It may affect your beach stroll. Sargassum rots after it washes ashore and produces hydrogen sulfide gas, which smells like rotten eggs. It can irritate your eyes, nose, and throat. Red tide. Floridians along the Gulf Coast are probably most familiar with this, the organism that causes our own red tides, which can result in massive fish kills, the deaths of marine animals, sea turtles, seabirds, and for humans, neurotoxic poisoning and respiratory impact. My daughter and her family are arriving from Colorado tonight, looking forward to beach time. I don't know if this will happen, but I just found out that Honeymoon Island is open. Spring breakers are disappointed that they can't frolic in the warm Gulf, and the tourist economy will be compromised. The unrelenting surge of devastating storms that are hitting the West Coast with snow, rain, mudslides, flooding, march across the country, rendering populations unable to weather the impact. And most recently, the massive tornado in Mississippi, which totally destroyed Rolling Fork, Mississippi. A town of 2,000, where so far 25 have been killed. Cybersecurity is another big one. How many of you have been hacked? Doesn't feel good, does it? I remember sitting at my computer one day, and all of a sudden, someone had control of my mouse. It took me about 4 or 5 days to get that fixed. They're becoming more and more common. No one's immune from it. And do you remember several years ago, Target got hacked? And as a result of that, we now have a chip on our credit cards and debit cards. Social vulnerabilities. In its broadest sense, social vulnerability is one dimension of vulnerability to multiple stressors and shocks, including abuse, social exclusion, and natural hazards. Social vulnerability refers to the inability of people, organizations, and societies to withstand adverse impacts from multiple stressors to which they are exposed. These impacts are due in part to characteristics inherent in social interactions, institutions, and systems of cultural value. Think of the LGBTQ community. Think of the elderly. Think of racial discrimination. Think of the brown and black people who have to keep their defenses up in face of danger from all directions: police, unscrupulous landlords, economic limitations. These social vulnerabilities are at the core of our social justice work. Ready for Life helps vulnerable kids aging out of the foster care system. According to Michelle Wagg of Ready for Life, their work is to keep those vulnerable kids off the streets, help them find jobs, and hopefully help them on the road to security as adults. Florida is not friendly to the LGBTQ community, as you know. Banning drag shows, imposing sanctions on transgenders, don't say gay. This one had hit close to home for me. My 11-year-old grandson, Isaac, at our Thanksgiving gathering, she announced that she was transgender. And she said, if anyone here is homophobic, you can leave. I can only wish her and her family well as they go through this massive transition. I am proud that we are revisiting the social justice agenda. I know of 2 groups of people who are meeting to create strategies that address their issues. Thank you, Reverend Kristina, for the forums. It's easy to throw money at causes, but we need to do more than that, and I think we will. I guess what I'm trying to point out is that everything and everyone is vulnerable to something. As David White so aptly said, vulnerability is not a weakness. a passing indisposition, or something we can arrange to do without. Vulnerability is not a choice. Vulnerability is the underlying, ever-present, and abiding undercurrent of our natural state. To run from vulnerability is to run from the essence of our nature. The attempt to be vulnerable is the vain attempt to become something we are not, and most especially to close off our understanding of grief for others. More seriously, in refusing our vulnerability, we refuse to help needed at every turn of the existence and the immobilize the essential, title, and conversational foundations of our identity. So be it.
Our closing hymn is from your gray hymnal, number 414, one of the very last pages of music, As We Leave This Friendly Place, 414.
As we leave this friendly place, love is not to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
In closing, true belonging is the spiritual practice of believing in and belonging to yourself so deeply that you can share your most authentic self with the world and find sacredness in both being a part of something and standing alone in the wilderness. True belonging doesn't require that you change who you are. It requires that you be who you are. We're in a spiritual crisis of disconnection. I define spirituality as that belief that we're inextricably connected to each other by something bigger than us. Some people call that bigger thing God. Some people call it fishing. Some people call it art. Spirituality is no more, no less than the belief that we're connected to each other in a way that's unbreakable. You cannot break the connection between human beings, but you can forget it. We have forgotten that inextricable connection between human beings.
We hope that you have found meaning in today's service. We close with these words by Robin F. Gray. The flame is extinguished, but not our hope for the future, our courage in the face of crisis, or the love we share in all the world.